very-hearted little man.
Default. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream.
Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Keep the faith.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
We had a process in place. We made a promise for 2 months that we would make them do it without our help, and we folded, and I hate that. We're in a hole. We got to dig out of this hole, and we can. We shot ourselves in the foot tonight, but we'll revisit this issue in December.
See you in December. Hello, everybody. Happy Friday, you bastards. We avoided a complete default of the United States and kicked the can down the road till December 3rd. Mitch McConnell blinked. And that is according to his own Republican caucus. I don't know how they can tell that Mitch McConnell blinked because nothing ever moves on Mitch McConnell's face except like his neck beard that jiggles in the wind. You know what I'm talking about? The little neck waddle thing that he's got going on there. So I guess they noticed that his eyes opened and closed and he blinked or he punted or he did some damn thing, but I didn't see any movement at all. I did see Ted Cruz. I did see Lindsey Graham try to do a crazy filibuster last night. Oh, yes, they did. They tried to filibuster in favor of defaulting the United States of America. That is what the Republicans were for last night. They were in favor of bankrupting, of making us a deadbeat nation. They were in favor of ruining, destroying the full faith and credit of the United States of America. And they are just livid that they did not get the chance to kick the crap out of us. They are really angry. They're really, really angry about that. So when they tried to filibuster, 11 Republicans cobbled together in a cloture vote. I swear to God, this is how we operate here in these United States. You need a supermajority to even open debate on whether or not the United States of America should be dragged kicking and screaming into default. And they cobbled together 11 Republicans who said, okay, we will vote to not default the United States of America, right? We will not default and plunge the world into a giant economic collapse. And now their base, Al-Qaeda, wants to punish them for that because, you know, the Constitution or some such thing. How could you be in favor of the Constitution, which says in the 14th Amendment that the full faith and credit of the United States of America shall not be questioned, and then be peeved because your party questioned the full faith and credit of the United States? I don't even understand it. Meanwhile, this is very short term is what this is. Everything else, goes on forever, like COVID, but this is very short term. Everything else goes on forever, like election audits. We're still doing them now, you know. The lingering stench of Trump, that goes on and on and on. But the solution to not defaulting the United States is a temporary pause in insanity is what that is. The deal is only good until December 3rd. The deal will be over before COVID is over. The deal will be over before the stench of Trump is cleared. The deal will be over before, I don't know, election audits are I can't even tell you. It's so bizarre. So Chuck Schumer, who was properly incensed that when it came time to actually vote to not default the United States, not for cloture, to open debate on whether or not. See, the 11 Republicans, they agreed to not, close down debate on whether or not. And so when he introduced the bill that would actually stop the default of the United States temporarily until December 3rd, give us like 2 months of breathing room, no Republicans voted to do that. 0 Republicans voted to respect the full faith and credit of the United States. Now, set that aside for a brief moment, that they were in favor, all of them as a party, of doing something completely unconstitutional with their power last night on the Senate floor, that it is a question and their answer was no. We will not protect the United States. We will not act in the best interests of America. We will not uphold the Constitution of the United States. No, we won't. No. But they got pissed. I mean, literally angry because Chuck Schumer got on the floor and said that this was a crisis manufactured by the Republicans who had absolutely no problem raising the debt ceiling when Trump was president. They had no problem raising the debt ceiling when Bush was president. They had no problem raising the debt ceiling when Ronald Reagan was president. They had no problem raising the debt ceiling when W was president, when HW was president, when any Republican president was president. They have no problem. But after the Republicans took their boot off our neck, they expected that we would go to the floor and say, thank you, may I have another? And even Joe Manchin is part of their crew. Let me show you this. Case in point, okay? Schumer got on the floor right ahead of the vote where no Republicans voted to not default the United States. And Manchin was sitting behind him. Keep your eyes on Joe Manchin sitting behind Chuck Schumer.
Leader McConnell and Senate Republicans insisted they wanted a solution to the debt ceiling, but said Democrats must raise it alone by going through a drawn-out, convoluted, and risky reconciliation process.
Look at him.
That was simply unacceptable to my caucus. And yesterday, Senate Republicans finally realized that their obstruction was not going to work. I very much thank my Democratic colleagues for showing our unity in solving this Republican-manufactured crisis.
Okay.
Despite immense opposition from Leader McConnell and members of his conference, our caucus held together, and we've pulled our country back from the cliff's edge that Republicans tried to push us over. This is a temporary but necessary and important fix. I appreciate that at the end of the day, we were able to raise the debt limit without a convoluted and unnecessary reconciliation process that until today, the Republican leader claimed was the only way to address the debt limit.
And he's up and he's out. He walks out. Joe Manchin literally walks out. Now, I thought maybe, he was sitting next to Patrick Leahy, who, if you really kept your eye on Manchin, you would see Leahy was touching. He was touching the Manchin. He was touching him. He was, telling him jokes, right? And he kept on, disturbing Joe Manchin's, grieving process, apparently. And so I thought maybe he got up and walked out because, Patrick Leahy was telling him old man jokes and hiding the matzah and, where he really hides it. I don't know. But no, he literally walked out because he thought it was inappropriate. It's inappropriate for Chuck Schumer to tell the truth on the floor of the Senate. And the truth is that there was 0 Republicans who would vote not to default the United States of America. He literally said, I find this, to be inappropriate.
I didn't think it was appropriate at this time. We had to talk about that, but he felt charged up, and he and I had good conversations.
Why was not appropriate?
I just think that basically what we got to do is find the pathway forward to make sure that we de-weaponize. Mm-hmm. We have to de-weaponize. You can't be playing politics. None of us can, on both sides, okay? Mm-hmm. And both sides have been very guilty of this.
Very Charlottesville.
The frustration was built up, and I'm sure Chuck's frustration was built up, but that was not a way to take it out.
That was not the way. Apparently what you're supposed to do when they take the boot off the neck of the United States of America, off the neck of the American people, is you're supposed to say, thank you, sir, may I have another. Now, John Thune, who is the Senate whip, he's the one that had to find the 11 Republicans. Yesterday, he was telling the media, I'm having a really hard time finding 10 Republicans to vote with the Democrats not to default the United States. And then when the thing happened with Schumer getting on the floor and saying, why in the world are Republicans playing politics with the full faith and credit of the United States of America? Why are they flirting with disaster? Why do we deserve as an American people to go through this at all every single time we have a Democratic president and we try to clean up your mess? Why? Thune said, I just thought it was an incredibly partisan speech after we just helped them solve a problem. You didn't help solve a problem. You agreed to stop being the problem. So here's the Republican strategy. Brutality followed by gaslighting. Get used to it because it's all going to happen again in December when the continuing resolution for funding the government also expires.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
All right, there is breaking news. As you probably learned in high school, John Adams insisted that a republic had to be a government of laws, not a government of men. And now we have a new Senate report on President Donald Trump's efforts to enlist the Department of Justice in his attempt to overturn, to steal the 2020 election. Okay, this is why Donald Trump is so sure that the 2020 election could be stolen, is because he tried to steal it, right? But the law itself was not sufficient to stop the coup that Trump wanted to carry out. He went everywhere he could go. You know, he went to the states. You know, he was recorded. Just find me 11,980, just one more than Joe Biden. Now we know that he was working his Justice Department. This is why Bill Barr left in December. He understood there was no fraud at all and was not willing to stage a coup. This is why we had an acting AG named Rosen. We had a deputy named McDonough. And we had this lurking character over there in the Civil Rights Division, a guy named Jeffrey Clark, who was willing to do the coup. He was willing to. He was the one that was willing to. And so now we know that he wrote a letter, Jeffrey Clark did, telling the Trump administration that they really should just claim fraud. And, Donald Trump said, he was telling Donald Trump, there are things that the Justice Department can do, but we can't do it all. And Donald Trump told everyone in the Department of Justice, oh, no, I don't need you to do very much. I just need you to say that there are questions about the validity of the election. I need for you to say that there could be fraud, there could be corruption, and then leave it up to me and the GOP in the House. And when none of that panned out, Donald Trump turned to his Al-Qaeda, he turned to his base, and he said, go ahead, just, burn it down, right? So we know what happened. Today was a deadline. Actually, last night at midnight was a deadline to comply with subpoenas that have been issued by the House Select Committee on January 6th on the insurrection. And you got Trump's lawyer literally saying out loud in public, telling guys like Steve Bannon and Patel and the chief of staff, Mark Meadows, and other to obstruct justice, just fail to comply with congressional subpoenas. But you see, that worked once, right? That worked once. That worked for guys like Don McGahn, the White House counsel back during the Trump administration, and only because they had a Bill Barr at the AG's office. They had a guy who wouldn't use the Department of Justice to enforce subpoenas that Congress issued, wouldn't hold people in contempt of Congress, wouldn't actually enforce any of the laws that Donald Trump didn't want enforced. Now, Bill Barr went a long way towards upending a nation of laws and not men in that way, but he wasn't willing to go to the next level of actual sedition, of actual insurrection, of actual overthrowing the government. And so he stepped aside and gave us, these three characters who were in the Department of Justice and were mulling it over. We now know that there was a meeting on January 3rd. This was the apprentice-style meeting where Donald Trump pitted Rosen, McDonough, and Clark against each other in an apprentice-style showdown to make their best case about who should be the attorney general, who would do the dirty work. And Clark was like, I'll do it. And the only reason why Donald Trump didn't pick Clark after the apprentice-style meeting, was because everyone else in the Department of Justice, everyone else, including U.S. attorneys, DAs, all over this country, said that they would resign en masse. They would resign all at once to send a message to us, the American people, that he was doing illegal things with the Department of Justice. And that's why he had to turn to violence in the end. And then he bailed, right? Because the reason for the violence was so that he would have an excuse to use the Insurrection Act and deploy the American military against the American people. But the American military obviously said no. And so that fell apart too. But you can see all the different ways that Donald Trump tried to steal and overturn the will of the people. So a lot of this stuff is actually written down. A lot of this stuff is on phone calls. A lot of this stuff is memorialized in memos. A lot of this stuff, like the letter that Jeffrey Clark wrote, is written. And so the select committee subpoenaed the National Archives, the keeper of all things presidential once you leave office. And the National Archives has been complying. And the National Archives has been giving copies of all kinds of relevant documents requested by subpoena by the Congress to both Donald Trump's lawyers, because that's the way you do it, and to the select committee in the House. And all of a sudden, Donald Trump's lawyers are having a gander at what Donald Trump did and all of the breadcrumbs that lead right to insurrection. And they have decided that they're going to try to invoke executive privilege. But you know, we are, as I said, something you learned in high school, a republic that is governed by a nation of laws, not a nation of men. And so we only have one president at a time. And Trump is not it. Now, Biden is. And Trump has to ask Biden to invoke executive privilege, since it is only Biden's choice, because only Biden has executive privilege, because only Biden is president. And as of today, Biden said no, he will not do that. He will not extend executive privilege to Donald Trump because, according to the lawyer that wrote White House counsel, Dana Remus, this is what Dana Remus wrote. NBC News got a copy of the letter. And wrote, I'm trying to find the exact quote. I don't want to add a word of mine into it. Quote, President Biden has determined that an assertion of executive privilege is not in the best interests of the United States and therefore is not justified as to any of the documents. These are unique and extraordinary circumstances. Congress is examining an assault on our Constitution and democratic institutions provoked and fanned by those sworn to protect them. And the conduct under investigation extends far beyond typical deliberations concerning the proper discharge of the president's constitutional responsibilities. The constitutional protections of executive privilege should not be used to shield from Congress or the public information that reflects a clear and apparent effort to subvert the Constitution itself. Now, let me reiterate just a little detail. These are my words now. Okay, quote is closed. You understand that privilege, any kind of privilege, attorney-client privilege, executive privilege, does not exist if it is asked in the commission of a crime, right? If a lawyer and a client are planning a crime together, there's no attorney-client privilege. Similarly, there is no executive privilege if a president is engaged in criminal activities. See Nixon. Just saying. But this is really wonderful news that Joe Biden will not shield Donald Trump from accountability.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
In many respects, a unique attack on the foundations of our democracy. The president's dedicated to ensuring that something like that could never happen again, which is why the administration is cooperating with ongoing investigations, including the January 6th Select Committee, to bring to light what happened. As a part of this process, the president has determined that an assertion of executive privilege is not warranted for the first set of documents from the Trump White House that have been provided to us by the National Archives. As we've said previously, this will be an ongoing process, and this is just the first set of documents. And we will evaluate questions of privilege on a case-by-case basis, but the president has also been clear that he believes it to be of the utmost importance for both Congress and the American people to have a complete understanding of the events of that day to prevent them from happening again.
Okay, so what has Congress subpoenaed? What did they ask the National Archives to turn over? What are the initial batch of documents? Well, it was a broad category. It was made by the committee, the Select Committee, which, you know, is bipartisan. Adam Kinzinger, the Republican, is on it. Liz Cheney, the Republican, is on it. And so they have requested a bunch of documents that include and cover Trump's actions and communications on January 6th, including the rally at the Ellipse on the White House grounds, subsequent meetings, communications throughout the day, like how many people called him and asked him to please go on TV and stop this and end it and tell his, his Al-Qaeda, his base, to go home, to stand down. You could, that request covers everything from Twitter messages, phone logs, visitor logs, any videos or photos of any event that he participated in. It also includes documents and communications related to then Vice President Mike Pence, his movement, the security measures that had to be taken to protect him. We're going to find out whether or not that military person that we see with him is actually carrying the nuclear football, as we think he is. And broadly, any other documents that refer to the rally at the Capitol, at the Ellipse, any subsequent riot video at the Capitol, any planning around any event that had to do with counting the electoral votes during the joint session of Congress. I mean, this is a very, 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 very large document request, very large. And what we hope to find is, what really happened that day. Now, we know that there have been new subpoenas issued for organizers of the January 6th insurrection. We know that Ali Alexander, I don't know if you remember Ali Alexander. He actually confessed. We have this tape from him from, January 13th, I think is when we recorded him, saying that I worked with the Republicans in the House. I worked with, Gosar from Arizona. I worked with Mo Brooks from Alabama. I worked with Andy Biggs from Arizona. I worked with a lot of Republicans, and we all organized this together.
I was the person who came up with the January 6th idea with Congressman Gosar, Congressman Mo Brooks, and then Congressman Andy Biggs. We four schemed up of putting maximum pressure on Congress while they were voting so that who we couldn't lobby, we could change the hearts and the minds of Republicans who were in that body hearing our loud war from outside.
So they subpoenaed him. They want him to show up. Now, how does a kid like this or a guy like this, how does Ali Alexander claim executive privilege? Okay. How does Bannon claim executive privilege? Bannon was not in the White House. He wasn't part of the executive branch. He was, this is so there. So now I'm telling Brett, there's breaking news. Guess what? Biden isn't going to protect. He's not going to shield. He's not going to, exert executive privilege on behalf of the ex-president, who obviously in the commission of a crime was communicating to a lot of people before that day, on that day, before that day, on January 3rd, January 4th, we have meetings. All this stuff is going on. And they're going to get real close to, Donald Trump himself. And so Brett said, well, what if he flees? What if Donald Trump realizes that he could be convicted of sedition or insurrection or, a coup? And he realizes that it would be like life in prison or, wouldn't he flee? Wouldn't he just flee the interview? Wouldn't he just flee, right? Wouldn't he just, go? And so I started Googling around to find, where could he go? Like, which countries don't have extradition with the United States? Well, there are a lot of countries that don't have extradition with the United States for their citizens. Like if a Chinese man commits a crime against the United States in China, if a Russian, as we learned the hard way, or 12 of them, or 13 of them are indicted by the United States of America for, trying to subvert our elections, trying to interfere in our elections in 2016, as they did, and they are indicted by our Department of Justice, as they were, would Russia have to extradite their own citizens? And the answer is clearly no. But who would protect an American citizen as they fled? Well, Ecuador comes to mind. Right. And of course, Russia comes to mind. So, I mean, the places Trump could flee to are, minuscule. There's only a handful. I guess he could go to, Botswana. one of the Gulf nations. I don't know, but it's not a real friendly world for Donald Trump. And there are like Botswana in Africa. Would Donald Trump really flee to a crap hole country? I doubt it. So there is a possibility that before 2024, which would be really appropriate, actually before 2023, we would have to have a come to Jesus moment as a country and realize that that man is so anti-constitutional, is so anti-democratic. And I mean, he hates democracy. He finds it because listen, what you're about to learn as a Republican, if you are a Republican, or as an independent who leans Republican, you're about to learn, if you don't know already, intellectually or in your heart, that the only reason why Trump's attempt to steal the election in 2020 failed is because it was being overseen by Donald Trump, which is the only reason it existed in the first place. So we're very, very lucky. I mean, everybody is sitting there saying, hey, we got evil geniuses and we got monsters, but thank God he wasn't a genius. Thank God. Okay. Thank God Donald Trump is not brilliant. Thank God Donald Trump inherited his money. Thank God Donald Trump is a failure, is an abject failure, and that nothing he ever touched lived. Nothing. I mean, he tried throwing everything at the wall, everything. There are so many places he went looking for help and threw everything at the wall to see if anything stuck. And he's more than happy to keep on throwing things like a gorilla in a cage until he makes it work somehow. And that is what Steve Bannon is talking about on his shows. When Steve Bannon's talking about shock troops, he's talking about getting the right people inside the other Trump administration, a new one.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
If you ever wondered what they want, what is this really all about? It's about no government. It's about deconstructing government, tearing it down. It's about making it so that they can drown it in a bathtub. It's about turning us into a third world country is what it is. And I'm going to show you two examples of them saying this out loud in a straightforward way and then alluding to it, okay? And I'm going to use two little short clips. This is Steve Bannon on his show this week talking about shock troops, okay? That he has learned from the failed coup. That the reason why the coup failed is because there weren't enough Trump loyalists inside the government who would tear down the government. That's what he learned.
The thing they fear is the righteous indignation of the working class in this country. And now they're seeing it. And that's why they're in meltdown. The story, I gave this talk to these appointees, and here's what I said. We're winning big in 2022. We're going to win big in 2024. We need to get ready now, right? We control this country. We got to start acting like it. And one way we're going to act like it, we're not going to have 4,000 ready to go. We're going to have 20,000 ready to go, and we're going to pick the 4,000 best and the most ready in every single department. And that's when we really start to deconstruct the administrative state. That's talk AFC pack. And it's trying to destroy. No.
Yeah, so his appeal is, hey, listen to me, all you middle-class white guys who can't make it, right? The reason you can't make it is because of the government. That's not true. The reason why you can't make it is because giant corporations have offshored your jobs. Giant corporations have moved headquarters, have moved factories, have moved manufacturing away from the United States. And there goes your future. That's what Build Back Better is about. It's about building back better supply chains. It's about building back better factories. It's about building the actual containers that are on those ships, which are made in China. Remember when we found out during the pandemic that we didn't make PPE here? We had to depend on South Korea. Remember we had to depend on Larry Hogan's wife? Larry Hogan, the governor of Maryland's wife, is a lovely South Korean woman who had connections in South Korea, and she used her friends and her family connections in South Korea to get shipments of PPE to the United States because we didn't have any. Remember that? Yeah. Remember when Jared Kushner told you weren't entitled to the federal government stockpile of PPE because that belonged to him, the feds, not to you in the States? That is their attitude about every single person in this country, okay? You can just die. You can just go to hell. We just don't care about you all that much. We're not that into you. Anyway, Bannon has concluded that if he speaks to men who are 50, 60 years old, who don't know why all this happened in the United States, who don't understand that trade wars actually backfired, that we have, a supply chain problem in this country, that we are running out of everything because of the previous administration's lack of preparedness anyway, and COVID and all that. Anyway, so he figures if he opens with that, then he'll get you to listen. And then he pitches you the actual destruction of the United States. Then he pitches it to these crazy people who are willing to do violence. And he tells them, we need shock troops. That's what he calls them. But he tells them the only reason why the coup failed, the only reason why the violence didn't work, the only reason why the DOJ wouldn't, upend the Constitution, the only reason why Bill Barr left is because he wasn't loyal enough. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go around the country. We're going to find 20,000 individuals. We're going to interview all of you for loyalty. We're going to administer, loyalty tests to Donald Trump. And to the proposition that we deconstruct, that we literally drown the U.S. government in the bathtub, that we end this republic, which they call an administrative state. They're talking about ending the republic. And there are plenty of Republicans who are down with this idea, okay? And when he says that out loud, what he's telling you is the only reason why we weren't able to explode America, the only reason why we weren't able to destroy America from within is because we didn't have enough people within. We didn't have enough people in the actual departments that could deconstruct the United States. Now, let me show you how Rand Paul is preparing people for their obliteration as well. Last night, during the Senate debacle that they caused, leading to filibusters and then having to have a cloture vote, finding 11 Republicans to vote to not default the United States, or having 11 Republicans to vote to allow the Democrats by a mere majority vote to not default the United States. Because remember, 0 Republicans voted not to default the United States. Rand Paul got on the floor. And Rand Paul said something so hair-raising. And I, for the life of me, sometimes I don't even know what producers at mainstream media are using as their benchmark for what America needs to hear their Republican representatives saying. I don't even understand how they pick and choose like what they're going to, because honestly, yes, Manchin, made a fool out of himself last night because he thinks that we should be polite every time the Republicans put their boot on America's neck. We should be polite. I can't understand him for the life of me, but Rand Paul literally said on the floor last night that if you make more than, I swear to God, I'll play it. If you make more than $2 a day in America, you would be considered middle class in a lot of other countries, but the media won't tell you that. Rand Paul literally told his constituents in Kentucky, who I imagine are like the only people who listen to anything Rand Paul has to say anymore. I don't know. Or people who, actually pleasure themselves when they read Ayn Rand or watch videos about libertarianism and no government. But Rand Paul is so down with this idea that he's literally telling poor white men that they ought to consider themselves lucky if they make more than $2 a day.
When you look at poverty, less than $2 a day in the world, it's less than 10% of the world. You won't find this on television. There's not going to be any good news on television or in the newspaper.
Good news.
The poorest people in our country actually are equivalent to the middle class in most countries. We are a huge success.
We're a huge success.
But we're a country misguided and led astray by media that aren't honest.
Okay. Okay, everybody, you got that? So if you're an American and you're barely making it, or you're living at poverty or below poverty, or just, a couple of ticks above poverty, if you want to live large, if you want to live like a king, if you want to live like Rand, go to Ghana, go to Somalia. You want your suburban dream house? You want your suburban dream house in impoverished Americans? Well, all you have to do is move to a wretchedly poor nation. In fact, you should be fleeing to Haiti, not the other way around. Now, remember, Rand is from Kentucky, and outside of Louisville and, the main metropolitan areas, that state is not an enclave of the rich, but it could be if you just moved your house, your trailer, your double wide, your single wide, to El Salvador, to Honduras. The poorest people in our country should know how lucky they are, because America is a great success because you make more than $2 a day. When he talks about the poorest America, he's talking about his own constituents. So I guess from that vantage point, he knows what he's talking about. So we'll give him that. But the people he's talking to are not Kentuckians that are living below the poverty line. They're not impoverished Kentucky coal miners. No. The people he is talking about are the weirdos who touch themselves when they watch Ayn Rand videos or spend all day in fights on obscure websites like Getter and Parler. We're a huge success, according to Rand. And we could be even more successful if we just focus on the rest of the world being poorer than us. Get ready, everybody. They are literally selling the failure of America to Americans. They are literally selling that. They can't figure out or find a way to make money making things better, so they're going to sell abject failure as a huge success. They're going to sell no government is the solution to your dilemma. I got news for you. 81 million people disagree with this and sent a very strong message about that to the Republicans last November. But they're not giving up. They are seriously inciting violence against our government, and by hook or by crook, either by invading our government with loyalists to a proposition that America must fail. They're gonna do it.
Mary had a little lamb. The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream.
Change has come to America.
Believe it.
Keep the faith.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
Based on this report, which you are releasing this morning, how close was it, in a way, to working?
We were a half step away from a constitutional crisis, a full-blown constitutional crisis. Understand the three phases. First phase, Trump goes to court, loses every lawsuit, which claims that there was voter fraud in the election. Next, he decides he has to take over the Department of Justice and the Attorney General and have the Attorney General push this narrative onto the states to tell them to stop from sending in their electoral college vote totals. When that failed, and our report goes into graphic detail of the efforts that were made, the third step was to turn the mob loose on the Capitol the day we were counting the ballots. Those are the three phases. Our report shows in detail how relentless this president was. Were it not for Jeffrey Rosen, Richard O'Donoghue, and 8 members of the Department of Justice who stood up and said, we'll resign if you take Rosen out of the picture and put Clark in, Jeffrey Clark in. If those efforts weren't made, we could have seen a collapse of that Department of Justice into a political entity. They already had their hand-picked successor, a man named Jeffrey Clark, ready to take over. And he was involved in areas that he should not even have touched as head of the Civil Division.
That's how close we came to having the will of the people subverted by a demagogue, by a man who just doesn't believe in the Constitution, doesn't believe in the will of the American people, doesn't believe in voting, doesn't believe in anything that is American. He believes in an autocratic society that he alone can, be in charge of it. And, bite me, if you don't like what I say, if you don't like what I do, if you don't. I mean, last night he was on with Hannity, literally trashing Mitch McConnell for not defaulting the United States. He said, we handed them a weapon. This is what he's going to say. We handed them a weapon and they wouldn't use the weapon. The weapon would have literally broken the dollar. It would have broken our economy. It would have broken the world. It would have broken every bet that Americans make every single day. Every day. I mean, it's amazing.
You did urge the United States senators today not to do what they promised for 2 months they wouldn't do, but yet they threw a lifeline to Chuck Schumer. And by the way, Chuck Schumer, Elizabeth Warren, yep, they're mocking Mitch McConnell. They're making fun of the Republicans, and they're laughing at him because he just threw them a lifeline that they didn't have to throw them.
The Republican Senate needs new leadership. I've been saying it for a long time. Mitch is not the guy. He's not the right guy. He's not doing the job. He gave them a lifeline. It's more than a lifeline. He gave them so much time now to figure out what to do because they were in a real big bind. They wouldn't have been able to do anything. He had the weapon and he was unable to use it. And it's a shame. It's a shame. These 11 people, I know some are wonderful and some I don't agree with too often. I'm not surprised to see some of the names, but I will tell you this, that was not a good thing that happened today.
Not defaulting the United States, not destroying the United States, or as Steve Bannon calls it, deconstruct the United States, or as Newt Gingrich said, and, Americans for Prosperity, make the government small enough to drown in a bathtub. Literally, these people have been for 30 years. Their wet dream is to destroy this country from within. Steve Bannon is sitting on his shows talking about interviewing 20,000 loyalists to insert them into the next Trump administration so that they can deconstruct the United States. Republicans are out there trying to prepare the ground for people to be abjectly poor and to accept it. To accept it. I just, for the life of me, Lindsey Graham, he was asked on Sean Hannity's show last night. Sean Hannity literally asked him, why help America? Now, he phrased it, why help the Democrats not default, right? But why help America? That is the question he's asking.
Why on earth would Republicans at this moment be helping the Democrats?
Why help America?
Well, we screwed up. For 2 months, we promised our base and the American people that we would not help the Democratic Party raise the debt ceiling so they could spend $3.5 to $5 trillion through the reconciliation. At the end of the day, we blinked. Two things have happened. We've let our people down, and we've made the Democrats believe we're all talk and no action.
So not defaulting the United States for the first time in the history of the United States was a screw up. It was a screw up. We screwed up. And our base wanted America to default. Our base wanted that. We promised them that. We told them we would destroy America. We told them that. And by the way, the debt ceiling has nothing to do with future spending at all. The debt ceiling is to pay the bills for stuff that's already on the credit card, money that was already taken out the door, given to recipients, and never paid for. That's what the debt is. George Bush had a tax cut. Everybody loves to forget about his $1.2 trillion tax cut for the wealthy. Never paid for that. Trump did a tax cut, $2 trillion. Never paid for that. The wars, everything else, no pay-fors, lowering taxes in a time of war. It's what Bush did. I mean, this is crazy. This is mass madness. But they do it because they want America to fail. They do it because they don't believe in democracy anymore. They believe in an autocratic, oligarchical society. They believe that corporations are people, my friend. They believe that corporate governance is the way to go. They don't believe in a nation of laws. They believe in a nation of billionaires, in a nation of men. They don't believe in the revolution. They don't believe that it was a legitimate thing. They don't believe in the Boston Tea Party. They think that was all a mistake. Setting up a republic was messy. It was a mistake. We should go back to having a king. We should go back to that. We should have a national religion like King George wanted. This time they'll pick the brand of Christianity. It'll be evangelical Christianity. That'll be the national religion. And the national, the dollar, the money, the corporate, they will be in charge of everybody's life. They will decide what's right and wrong for everybody. They will have ultimate say. We will not have a government of laws. Laws are cumbersome. Laws are a pain in the butt. The Constitution's a pain in the butt. It guarantees equal protection under law for women. Who needs it? We hate women. It guarantees equal protection for black people and Hispanic people and all of our citizens. And who needs it? We don't like them. Just do away with it. Blow it up. I mean, he's literally sitting there saying we screwed up last night when we didn't default the United States, and our base is pissed.
At the end of the day, every Republican voted against raising the debt ceiling.
Oh, my God.
Every Democratic senator voted for it. But we had a process in place. We made a promise for 2 months that we would make them do it without our help, and we folded. And I hate that. We're in a hole. We got to dig out of this hole, and we can. We shot ourselves in the foot tonight, but we'll revisit this issue in December. This issue comes back again in December.
But slow down, Senator. I don't want to talk about December. Hang on a second. For 2 months, the Republican caucus in the Senate, you were all united. You were united until the day before yesterday. You were united.
Literally.
I mean, you think about it. Today's Thursday. You were united on Tuesday. You weren't going to do this. Yes. Why did Mitch McConnell do this and then twist the arms of, and we'll put up the names of the 11 Republicans that caved? You know, why at the last minute did Mitch McConnell do what he said he wouldn't do?
Because Wall Street, the bankers, the corporate titans, all of the people who own your party, who own Mitch McConnell, told him, if you explode it, you're going to blow our fingers off. Good game of chicken. Played it right up to the edge. America is in an uncertain, place. We like that. But don't blow it up quite yet.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
We're in a bad spot, but was self-inflicted. He said that if we continue to do what we promised to do, there's a threat from the Democrats they will change the filibuster rule and blow up the Senate. We cannot live that way. When President Trump was in power, he asked us to change the rules every day, wanting us to get our way, and I said no. So I have no sympathy for the Democratic Party threatening to use the filibuster to implement their socialist agenda. At the end of the day, we cannot be extorted and live this way. We should have stood our ground and played this out. I don't believe they would have blown up the Senate over this. We gave them a path to raise the debt ceiling through reconciliation.
Senator, hang on a second.
We just didn't want our fingerprints on it.
Joe Manchin said today again that he wouldn't use the nuclear option. So that if it was a threat, it was an idle threat that wouldn't have manifested, assuming that Joe Manchin was a man of his word. OK, so that, and does that mean the Republicans, all the Democrats have to do is say, we're going to use the nuclear option? Well, we're going to be a hostage to the threat of the use of the nuclear option and then give up on core values and promises?
Your core values are defaulting the United States? That is your core value? You talk about raising the debt limit, which prevents a default of the United States and turns us into a deadbeat nation, a socialist something or other, a Marxist something or other. I don't know. Is it socialism? Is it Marxism? Is it communism? What is it? Is it fascism? I mean, the names that they throw out there willy-nilly about defaulting the United States is really quite breathtaking. It's really an amazing phenomenon how defaulting the United States of America became the goal of the Republican Party, and anything less than defaulting the United States became a socialist, Marxist, wet dream of fascists, or whatever they're going to call us today. Very sad, very sick, very twisted. The only good news here is that only about 3 million sycophantic people watch that swill every night. You know, only 16% of America gets their news from cable, just so you know. I mean, this is just, it's so poisonous and toxic and the words they say have no meaning at all. It's just to agitate people. It's just to keep people angry. Angry at what? At their government, so that they're willing to destroy it. So that they're willing to do away with governing. They're willing to just kill the republic itself. It's just so ugly and so anti-American. It's so anti-democratic. And then on the other end of their show, they'll sit there and they'll tell you, don't get vaccinated. Don't take care of your health. Don't protect your children. Don't put masks on your children when they go to school, which are little petri dishes, and we have a Delta variant out there. I mean, it's just, their agenda is so anti-American. And I mean American. I mean, it's against the people. But the people can't figure out what's going on because they don't tell you what you need to know in order to solve any problem, no matter what it is. And so you just flail out there and flail out there and flail out there. And the more you flail, the more agitated you get. And the more agitated you get, the angrier you get. And they just want to feed that machine. They want to feed that beast. They want you to flirt with disaster. I mean, they're telling you that a 2-month reprieve from defaulting the United States is a way that you now have to accept living. You have to accept living in complete uncertainty. You have to accept living by virtue of a Republican Party that won't even give a surety. They won't even give security to anyone in this country and outside this country who does business with this country, that America won't default on its debt, that America will not become a deadbeat nation, that America will not respect and uphold any of its values at any given moment. And so you just don't know. I mean, the idea that we have to live like this from moment to moment, from minute to minute, from second to second, wondering if America's going to fail, if America's going to fail. That's crazy. It's unnecessary and it's crazy. And no, we're not going to be polite as you threaten to just deconstruct the Constitution, shred it. Are you out of your mind? Annie in North Carolina.
Hi.
Hey.
Hi, Randy. Good afternoon. I'm going to try to stay focused. I have so many things to say. First of all, your hair grew out pretty quickly from that shorter haircut you had.
My hair grows like ragweed. It grows really fast. That's
Mine
why
grows.
I was just going to say, that's why I'm not afraid to cut it off, because it grows right there.
Yeah, same here. I just got a new shorter haircut. Steve Bannon, I think it was on the campaign trail, or he was out of there in August of 2017. Remember when he said our job is to, deconstruct all the government agencies?
Yes.
But the point I'm going to make right now is that November 5th, 2 days after the election, here's his quote. If it were up to him, he would execute Fauci and Wray, then put the heads on pikes at either corner of the White House as a warning to any bureaucrat who dares oppose Trump's drive to make America great again.
Right.
Yeah. And you know what? I called Susan Collins' office, read this quote into their Augusta office, talked to a real person, and then I said, remember when Susan Collins' life was threatened? There was a woman who actually called one of her offices, threatened to cut off her head, and I think they got her number because she left it or something. That woman was prosecuted through the U.S. Attorney's Office, is serving 5 years in federal prison. I said to Susan Collins' office, I go, why isn't anybody doing anything to Bannon?
Yeah, I mean, look, the idea that they speak a very violent language to people who are very, very confused and angry because they're confused, and that is why you see all this violence at school boards and violence at nurses and doctors now in
Oh,
hospitals.
yeah. It's horrible.
Election officials are getting their lives threatened, their families.
yeah.
What the hell? I'm telling you, just
It's
what you're
scary.
saying is true. They speak in violent terms because they need a certain number of people to overthrow the government by violence if all else fails.
Oh, they're all over here in Western North Carolina. It's scary what's going on here in Western North Carolina.
Is it? Because, you know, I got
Well, it's scary in the sense that, you know, they're so bold. And, I mean, they meet in, like, grocery store parking lots, and they, you know, run around with their F Biden flags.
Oh,
and,
the F Biden thing, yeah.
And,
You know, listen,
and then,
they like...
and the law... Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, you know, they have this new thing where they go to, you know, family gatherings like baseball games and football games and basketball games.
Yeah.
Right. And
I saw that.
And there's little kids around and all, and they think that it's a great lesson to teach your kids to scream F Joe Biden. They think that that's, you know, that's
they think it's
leadership.
cute.
Well, no, they think it's leadership. They think it's, you know, a good value to teach their kids. Listen, these are very, very unhappy people. There's no question. And all you have to do is talk about the situation and lay blame where blame belongs, and they get triggered. And then,
Well, here's one of the points. I'm glad you said that word, because Hospitality Mint's been around for 40 years, moved to Mexico. It was from Boone, North Carolina, to Mexico while 45 was president.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randy, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
Well, I think there is a growing frustration, not only in the Congress, but among the American people.
You think?
That now is the time, Rachel, for us to try to restore the faith of the American people in their democracy and in their government, that we, in fact, can do meaningful things for them, that we can improve their lives. And all that we are trying to do in many ways is to do what countries all over the world are doing. Is it really very radical to say that older people in America should not have rotting teeth in their mouth, or should not be able to afford hearing aids or eyeglasses, or that disabled people should be able to stay home and get the care they need at home rather than be forced into a nursing home, or that working families should pay 20, 25, 30% of their income for childcare. And then when you deal with the issue of climate, you know, just last week, scientists working on climate change got the Nobel Prize. Climate change is the existential threat to our planet. We cannot walk away from that issue and then go back to our kids and grandchildren and say we couldn't do it. This is the future of the planet. So I am tired of the generalities, you know, hearing what Mr. Manchin and, frankly, Ms. Sinema are saying. And if they want to negotiate, let's negotiate. But when you got the overwhelming majority of the American people, the overwhelming majority of the Democratic House and Senate caucus, when you got the President of the United States, you know, it's not a 50-50 deal. Mr. Manchin deserves to be heard. He deserves to get some compromises, but it is wrong for one or two people to think that they can dictate the outcome of this process.
The American people are frustrated, and that's why they are so angry. There are people who understand what the issues are, and there are people who understand that there are solutions to their issues. And then there are other people who are just plain angry and can't figure out the solutions or don't want to hear about the solutions. They want to hear a demagogue stand on a stage and say, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to know anything. I love the undereducated. I alone can fix it. Infrastructure is easy. That's why I saved it for the second year. It's no big deal. I can get it done. Repeal and replace this healthcare plan. I can get it done. And then, you know, do nothing except redistribute your tax dollars to the wealthiest people under the guise of a cult of personality and tell you that COVID is a hoax and tell you that his trying to overthrow the U.S. government, or his blackmailing our allies, or, the second impeachment was about the coup, that it was a hoax. Everything is a hoax. Nothing is real. Only he is real, and only his ideas are real, and yet he failed to produce a thing. He failed to produce anything for anybody. We didn't get better health care. We didn't get an infrastructure package. We didn't get, anything at all. In fact, the guy who's threatening violence on his internet thing, Steve Bannon, is a guy who literally defrauded these same people out of millions of dollars when he started this bogus fundraiser called We Build the Wall. That's why Steve Bannon was pardoned by Donald Trump, because he committed fraud against the same people who are still listening to him. It is an amazing turn of events, let's say. But here's what you need to understand about how it's being done. Steve Bannon and Cambridge Analytica, which was a fake, fraudulent setup of a company. They picked the name Cambridge because it sounded like the university and it sounded real, and Analytica because it sounded like an internet, enterprise that was, it was literally the Ponzi scheme people. It was the pyramid scam people. It was the DeVos family. Okay. It was the Mercers. It was people who are very adept at defrauding you, of parting you with your last earned dollar, with your last nickel. They're very good at getting you to give to snake oil salesmen. They engaged in a psychological profiling on a massive scale through Facebook. And everybody knows that who wants to know that. That's why Facebook's time might just be over. It might. I don't know. We'll see what the will is to actually regulate their algorithms. And you say, well, what is an algorithm? An algorithm is a set of instructions. It's a script. And it tells the internet where to send you next, or where to send you when you query it for any question you have. And based on the psychological information that the artificial intelligence gathers about you, it will guide you to right wing, if that's what you click on or that's what you like. And by like, I mean you give it a thumbs up, and it will give you more and more of that so that you feel like that's real, even though it's not. Steve Bannon and Cambridge Analytica did that on a massive scale on Facebook. They did it not just to you. If you responded to one of these, I don't know, which Marvel comic hero do you most, identify with? Or for the girls, which Sex and the City girl are you? Are you a Carrie? Are you I'm
a Samantha.
A Samantha. Who are the other? I just blanked out on that.
Charlotte. I'm not
Charlotte,
looking, guys. Isn't Charlotte one? Samantha,
Yeah,
Carrie, and
Charlotte.
then who's the last one? The redhead.
Cynthia Nixon's her real name.
Right. What was her character's name?
We're getting old.
Yeah.
But, and if you answered that, it collected not just information about how you see yourself, but it collected that same information from all of your friends and all of your friends' friends, and so on and so on. And it created a massive database. And the reason why the Republican Party is so afraid of Steve Bannon and Donald Trump and people who have that profiling information is because they can pinpoint all the voters in this country by name. They can pinpoint, let's say, Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, who's just bat crap crazy. Ron Johnson, who's cray-cray, they know where all his voters are. And if Ron Johnson doesn't go along with destroying or deconstructing or talking down the constitutional republic that we live in, if he's not talking down vaccinations, if he's not talking down protecting yourself, if he's not talking, for Trump, if he's not, supporting Donald, they know where all his voters are, and they will actually start putting negative information about Ron Johnson in those voters' news feeds. That's why they're so afraid. They're not afraid because Donald Trump is Donald Trump or because Donald Trump is an evil genius. No, they're afraid because of the psychological profiling, the data, the information, the mailing list, all of it. All of it. The thousands and thousands of pieces of information that they have on each and every voter by name. By name.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
Here's a flashback, okay? This is an older report.
It was marketed as a breakthrough in how to motivate, change people's minds, and manipulate them to vote or not vote in an election. Using the personal Facebook data of tens of millions of Americans, Cambridge Analytica developed a voter targeting technique aimed at specifically targeting individual voters who would receive messages on their Facebook feeds, group chats, and even personal communications. And it turns out the Russians were paying attention.
The Information Commission in the UK is saying that she believes that the Cambridge Analytica Facebook data was accessed by people in Russia. Now, we don't yet know...
In Russia.
In
not
Russia.
Just Russians.
In Russia. In Russia. We don't yet know who they were and what they accessed and whether they took that data or what they did with it. But that link has been established through the ISO's investigation. So clearly, it will be really important to understand exactly what the level of access was of people in Russia to this Facebook data and what they did with it.
Damien Collins is a British member of Parliament for the Conservative Party, whose committee is running an almost identical investigation as his U.S. counterparts, looking at Russian meddling in the 2016 Brexit referendum. It has focused largely on controversial Facebook user data, the data analytics firm of Cambridge Analytica, and a data scientist named Alexander Kogan,
who created the tools and the apps that allowed Cambridge Analytica to receive a large amount of Facebook user data.
Alexander Kogan delivered the data to Cambridge Analytica, and now CNN has learned he may have, perhaps unwittingly, allowed access to that same Facebook data to Russian actors. Kogan began working 4 years ago on a joint project at Russia's St. Petersburg University, sponsored by the Russian government. Kogan, who is a U.S. citizen, did not want to do an on-camera interview, but told CNN, "On my side, I'm not aware of any Russian entity with access to my data." He questioned anyone's conclusion that someone accessing his data in Russia means actual Russian agents were involved. It could have nothing to do with the Russian authorities, he told us. It could just be someone checking their mailbox.
So that was an old report in the middle of the Mueller investigation. And what we learned way after that report about this Facebook Cambridge Analytica data mining experiment and the proactively feeding people tens and tens and tens of millions of Americans, feeding them exactly what had been tested to appeal to them psychologically, to get them to vote or not to vote, and then if they were going to vote, how to vote. We learned that that was being manipulated from a troll farm in St. Petersburg, Russia. We know that for a fact, and we know that 13 indictments of Russians actually occurred inside the Mueller report. Okay, that's kind of what happened there. But they don't extradite, which takes us back to the top of the show. Russia doesn't extradite its citizens to the United States if they violate U.S. law. And so we've indicted them, but we've never been able to bring them to trial, and we've never been able to question them, and we've never been able to probe them. But they have all this voter information. And also what we've learned subsequently in the years later is that most of these evangelical websites that appeal to people of faith are run out of troll farms in Macedonia and other Russian satellite nations. And they are influencing the way people see vaccination and vaccines and masking and a whole host of things in order to hurt Americans and in order to hurt the American recovery from the pandemic. I mean, this plot against the American people is literally employing the best data scientists in the world, the most unbelievably ubiquitous platforms in the world. Facebook, we worry about or we look at the 3 million that still are able to be lied to day after day after day by Fox News hosts, right? And we marvel at the fact that Tucker Carlson is just spewing white supremacy, like Viktor Orban, Hungarian, Russian, kind of white supremacist ideology every night. And 3 million Americans tune into that, knowing that they have gotten everything wrong since the beginning of Fox News. Everything about needing to invade Iraq, everything about needing to invade Afghanistan, everything about trickle-down economics and tax cuts for the wealthy in a time of war, from the Bush administration all the way down to Trump and the insurrection. We know that they get everything wrong, and people still tune in. That's because they are psychologically profiled, and they are fed a steady diet of what they respond to, what triggers them, what keeps them agitating. But the real culprit, the real hand of propaganda is Facebook. There are 2.9 billion, 3 billion Facebook users. In some countries, when you say, go on the internet, you say go on Facebook, because that is the only internet that they have access to, is through Facebook. That's what's happened here. People can't understand what has made people want to attack school boards, what has made people want to attack nurses and doctors, what has made people want to attack election officials. It is propaganda that is literally psychologically tailored to them, that is designed to get an angry response from the user in order to keep them agitating and angry over things that aren't even happening. For instance, critical race theory. Critical race theory, again, is a legal study. It's a look at how the law does or does not affect people of color. And it's a legal theory. Now, if first or second or third graders or fifth graders or sixth graders or ninth graders could understand legal theory, that would be impressive. But they can't, and we're not teaching critical race theory in any K through 12 school in this nation. But you have people going to school board meetings, attacking school board members who, most of them are ex-teachers who are voluntarily serving on these school boards. They don't even get paid. And now they're getting hate messages on their phones at home threatening their families. Well, why would somebody want to do that? Well, if your interest is in privatizing public education, sure, you would want to do that. And big money in this country does want to do that. And so this is how they gin up the anger towards public school. Healthcare. Well, that's coming from, a bunch of evangelical websites that are run out of, Eastern Bloc countries, right? Telling people that it's all a hoax, they don't need to vaccinate themselves, that they're tracking you with it, whatever. And they're programming it to, people of faith. They're programming it to people who are predisposed to go to evangelical Christian websites, telling them this stuff. And then those people are agitated and angry, and they attack nurses and doctors who, prior to this effort, trusted doctors and nurses with their lives. Now, all of a sudden, they're the enemy. How'd that happen? Psychological profiling. Same thing with, elected officials. Donald Trump and others who don't want democracy to survive have a need and a desire to make you doubt voting, make you doubt free and fair elections in the freest and fairest election holding country on the planet, the United States. I mean, we have elections and everybody signs off on them because there is no fraud. And if there is, it's 3 people that voted for their dead mother. Woohoo. Doesn't change anything, the result of anything. But they want to change the law so that the people that they have psychologically profiled have a tough time getting access to a ballot. And so now they're attacking the election officials. Well, what good is that? Well, if people say it's not worth it and I don't want to be an impartial election official anymore, I don't want to be a League of Women Voters poll worker, I don't want to be a senior citizen who volunteers at the polls because it's dangerous, well, then we'll get Steve Bannon's shock troops manning the polls. And we'll get partisan poll watchers who threaten voters that they suspect aren't going to vote their way. And it destroys democracy. That's where we are. The good news is 81 million of us out of, 140 million who actually vote in this country know this. And there are more people who know this, and there are more people who are much more interested in voting now that they're taking away constitutionally protected rights like the right to vote, the right to privacy, the right to assemble. They're much more interested in voting than they used to be. So there's always an equal and opposite reaction as long as physics is physics and physics is physics. And so we will persevere. And I truly hope we will prevail. But the odds are, they're getting twisted is what it is. The odds are being affected by these tactics. Have a good weekend.